Okay, let's talk about relationships and entity framework. Before we do that, I'm going to review foreign keys in SQL, which we did, but you may be a little rusty. Okay, this FK stands for foreign key, and it basically, all of really foreign keys are just columns that point to somewhere else. All right, so let's say if we have blogs. So let's say I have a website and it's like Blogger. Say Blogger is a website where you can log in and you can create a blog for yourself about cats or dogs or whatever the heck you want. So you got your blog, and let's say you got like a name for your blog. So here's my blog table. I've got this blog. I primary key is one, and its name is cat blog. And then so you've got your blog name, for example. And so a blog, if you think about it, is a series of posts. So the cat blog will have posts, and the dog blog will have posts. The cat blog's posts are different from the dog blog's posts. So we want to have some way of differentiating them. We also want to save our posts in the database. So I'm going to select all from blogs and select all from posts, just so we can see. There we go. All right, so the top is my blog table and the bottom is my post table. Notice that in the post table has this blog ID, which is a foreign key. Okay, foreign key is something that is a concept in databases. Okay, so this one points to the one in the blogs table. So that means that this post belongs to blog number one. This post also belongs to blog number one, but this post number three belongs to blog number two. All right, so this is a foreign key, and you can see it because when we post under the keys folder, we have a foreign key. So SQL keeps track of these foreign keys so that it knows which table to point to. And this is nice because all we have to do is have a number in the post table that points to the blog, and then the blog can add columns all it wants to, and that we can get all the blog related information, not putting it in one table, but having a number that points to the other table. Okay, this is just for organization's sake. All right, so this is really important that you get this because the post knows what blog it belongs to. So this is for foreign keys, and how does this relate to relationships? Well, for example, posts and blogs. There are many posts per blog, according to the way the site is written. So that means that there's a many-to-one relationship between posts and blogs. Now you're wondering, like, what does this relationship mean? Is it a database? Is it code? You have to think a little bit more abstract than that. So what we're really talking about at the end of the day is object-oriented programming, right? We have objects that represent real-world things with properties and behaviors, and we use that framework in code to help us write code that helps us solve a problem in the real world. So it goes above SQL, it goes above databases, it goes beyond C sharp, right? Object oriented programming is a concept that you can use in any programming language that supports it. So that wants you to kind of move past saying, oh, it's one thing or another. So really, these are each, you can think of it as a blog table, and each row is a blog, or you can think of it as objects, but basically it's just data. All right. So we have to think about relationships between data. So we want to know how one piece of data is related to another piece of data. And like I said, there's three main ways they can be related. So we have many to one, or many to many, or they have no relationship. We don't really count the no relationship one, but technically speaking, that's the fourth category. They're two tables or two classes or two objects have no relationship to one another. All right, so I think the many to one is pretty easy. We can imagine that there's many posts for a single blog. All right, so that way, and then the post is a table that has the foreign key, it has the reference to the other object. All right, so the blog does not know what post it has. The posts know what blog they belong to. All right, so if you ever have a like a hard time knowing which object to put the foreign key in, it's always, if it's many to one, the object that there's many of should have the reference to the one. All right, that is always a good um, rule of thumb. All right, so we have many to one per post, many posts per blog. All right, so next we have one-to-one relationships. So I'm going to do blog images. So just like picture, you have like a blog, like for cats, and they're not called blogs images. S, there we go. All right, let's say your blog had an image. This image is like your branding. It's like the first image people relate to your blog. All right, you can think of it like your logo or whatever you want to call it, but you have one image. Okay, your blog gets one. That's it. So in this case, it looks very similar to the many to one, except that each row, like for example, this blog goes to one, right? There's only one blog image that goes per blog. That's the rule. So in this case, the foreign key goes to one, but there will only be one row in this table with this foreign key of one, right? That's because it's one to one. It's not many to one. So one to one relationships are very easy. The foreign key points to the other object, just similarly to many to one. So this first blog image, the pretty kitty, belongs to the cat blog, and the what other image this is woof, there it is, that belongs to the dog blog. All right. So that's a one to one relationship. All right, the more difficult one, the most difficult of the three, is many to many relationships. So let's do actors and movies. Actors and movies is actually a good way of doing it. Select all from actor or movie. All right, so you have actors like Amy Adams and Christian Bale, and then you have movies like Top Gun or The Dark Knight. All right, so an actor can star in many different movies. That's just like in real life, right? They can be in five, six, whatever kind of movies, and a movie will have more than one actor. I don't know if there's a movie that has only one actor. Maybe there is, but typically speaking, movies have many actors. So an actor can be in many movies, and the movie can have many actors. This is pretty much the quintessential many to many relationship. So how do you do that? How does it show up in the database, for example? All right, well, in this case, we have our actors, all right, which is always have a primary key and the name, and then the movie is a primary key and the title of the movie. And so how do we do that? Well, we don't want to put foreign keys in either the actor or the movie table because that would get out of hand. So we'd have to have like Amy Adams, then movie number two, then Amy Adams movie number three, all in the same thing, and that would just be kind of weird. So instead, we have what's called a join table. Okay, the actor movie is a table that's called the join table. And it does just what you think it does. It basically matches actors with movies. So, for example, actor number three, which is Scarlett Johansson in this case, yeah, this is three, this is Scarlett Johansson, it was in movie number one, which is The Avengers. Okay, so that way we can use it more than once. So you see actor number three comes up again down here, and it's also in movie number two, The Perfect Score. So that way, Amy Adams, I'm sorry, Scarlett Johansson, excuse me, Scarlett Johansson number three. Scarlett Johansson was in The Avengers, and Scarlett Johansson was also in The Perfect Score. All right, so The Perfect Score had many actors, and Scarlett Johansson has many movies that she's in, and so on and so forth. So number four is Chris Evans. He was in The Avengers, and Chris Evans was also in The Perfect Score. And then actor number one is Amy Adams, and Amy Adams was in the American Hustle. And then Christian Bale was also in American Hustle, okay, because American Hustle is number three. All right, so this join table just basically matches the actors with their movies, all right? And this is a good example of a many-to-many relationship. This is how you would see it in SQL. You'd have the two tables that are related to one another, and then a third table called a join table, which will have the keys from both the other tables and match them together just like this. All right, so we've got blogs and posts, which is a many to one. We've got blogs and blogs images, which is one to one, and then actors and movies, which is many to many. So you need to commit these relationships to your memory because they could be an interview question. Also, it's just generally speaking something you need to know for programming, for object-oriented programming. Because when we think about these classes, we have to think about how they're related to one another. That's just something you have to do in order to program correctly. All right, so as far as Entity Framework is concerned, Entity Framework makes setting this up very, very easy. All right, let's look at blogs and posts. Let's look at our many-to-one relationship. All right, so I've got two C# classes, right? And again, there is some difficulty with like the wording. So like this is a class. And you're like, well, what's a model or entity? All a class is just a collection of data. Like, look at this. Okay, that's all it is. It's just an integer, a string, a list of posts. It's just data. So we use the terms like model and entity and class. They're really like not different from each other in practical terms, in terms of concept. All right, you just have to get kind of used to moving between C Sharp and SQL, because we use the term model for other programming languages too. All model really means is a collection of data that points to something in real life. Okay, so for example, this is a blog, right? We're modeling a blog. Like in a real world blog would have a name, and it would have posts and an image, right? So that's modeling. This class represents a real life blog. Okay, that's something that exists in the physical world. All right, so we have a list of posts, right? This list is for more than one thing. So the blog, which is the parent object, will have a list of posts, right? So that means these posts go with this blog. So that means, therefore, in the post class, okay, we have a framework helps us to make this relationship by having this basic pattern. So if you have a many-to-one relationship, you on the child object, which is the post, there's many posts, so it's a child object. You'll have the foreign key, which is the blog ID, and then an instance of blog. Okay, so you have the ID pointing to the parent, and then an instance of the parent, just like this, right? And then in the parent, you'll have a list of the child object, which in this case is post. This is the pattern you have to follow, right? Any framework core is expecting a certain pattern, and then if it finds a pattern, it will apply the relationship for you. So that's how I was able to go in here, and you'll notice like post has the foreign key. Entity Framework did this, not me. So Entity Framework looked at the code and said, okay, post references blog ID here and has an instance of blog, and blog has a list of posts, so Entity Framework will infer that there is a many-to-one relationship between posts and blog. That's what Entity Framework does. When Entity Framework makes these SQL tables, then it will go ahead and put a foreign key there for us because it knew what the relationship was. Okay, one-to-one relationship works very similarly. Okay, so I have blog image. Okay, blog has a blog image here, as you can see. Okay, we have one blog image per blog, let's say. And then we'll have foreign key blog ID. Okay, remember this is the ID of the blog, so it has to point to here. Now you're saying, Jonathan, the primary key in blog is called ID, but this one's called blog ID. And I'm like, yes, but Entity Framework knows that this is blog because the name of the class is blog, so it will infer that blog ID points to the class called blog. Okay, it will figure that out because of the name, right? So you have a foreign key with the ID and then an instance of blog, and then Entity Framework will be able to infer the one-to-one relationship, and then when you go ahead and you make a table, Entity Framework put this foreign key constraint here for me. I didn't do anything. This is all Entity Framework. All right, so that's a one-to-one relationship, and then the many-to-many relationship used to be harder in Entity Framework. Now it's super easy. Here's the actor class. It's got a primary key in the name, and then it has a list of movies. Okay, remember, list is for multiple things. You guys sometimes forget what list means. It's for multiple things. I have multiple movies per actor, so that means that there's many movies. An actor can have many movies. All right, and then as you can guess, on the movie side, there's list of actors, right? So that any framework will look at this and be like, hey, here's a list of actors, here's a list of movies. There must be a many-to-many relationship between actor and movie. So any framework will create this join table for you, right? I didn't make actor movie here. Okay, I didn't make these tables. Entity Framework did. So Entity Framework 6, which is the latest version of Entity Framework, will make this join table for you. In the olden days, it didn't. You had to create your own, but nowadays it does. So that's really nice. So that's basically it. All you have to do is construct your classes with correctly. And I just, like I said, don't be like too creative. This is the way Entity Framework wants you to do it. So follow what they're telling you to do. So if you look at my classes, you just follow the exact same pattern for yours. And then if you want to seed data, which means when you start your database, you want it to have some data in it, you can use this basic model. One thing I want you guys to start doing is looking at examples as like patterns, okay, just like in math, or just patterns that you should follow. All right, because programming, you're not doing anything novel. Like it's the same thing other people have done. You're just doing it in whatever order. So this is a way to start the database off. We call it seeding data. It means when the database is first built or first, first constructed, I want to have this data in these tables. So it'll always be model builder.entity blog.has data, and then you do a constructor just like this new blog, and then be sure to give them their, their properties. One pro tip: don't skip out on the primary key. You have to tell it that this is ID 1 and this is ID 2. Okay, so that's just something you just have to remember. If you want to do it, for example, blog has a many-to-one relationship with posts. Post has a blog ID, so therefore blog should come first before posts come. The reason for that is because the blog has to exist before the post can point to it, right? So if we go back to blogs and posts, so go from posts. Okay, see how this is like 2, right? Like, so this has to point to something that exists. So blog ID with the ID of 2 does exist, so this is fine. If there was not a blog, if number 2 here didn't exist, this could not happen because we have that foreign key constraint. It means when you point to something, it needs to exist in the other table. So that's why I have blog. I did this code first, then did the post, because these blogs have to exist before these posts can point to them. Okay, that's just a small little thing, but it could result in you tearing your hair out if you don't do these in the correct order. All right, that should do it.